If you just looked at the headlines about this budget, which of course is all the government really wants you to look at, and if you listen to the government's rhetoric, you might say, oh great, the budget's going to balance in a couple of years and it's because of the rigorous spending restraint the government has imposed. Well, in fact, that's not really very true. First of all, spending is not really under control. It's about $6 billion higher than it was projected to be for this year 2 years ago. So whatever restraint they were once upon a time contemplating, they've given up on. Revenues, however, are supposed to soar. I think that's one part of that is wishful thinking. They seem to be assuming much higher levels of revenues than seem plausible. One part of it is federal transfers, which have skyrocketed to Ontario over the last few years. One part of it is asset sales, like the partial sale of Hydro One, which can't be repeated more than once. And one part of that is the carbon permit sales that they're projecting in the next year to grow to $1.9 billion. But even then, when you look at the actual state of this government's finances, it's one thing to say you're going to balance the budget in 2 years, but the budget itself is only a small fraction now of the total amount of borrowing this government does. So even as it's balancing the budget, total borrowing is supposed to go up by $8 billion one year, $10 billion the year after that, $30 billion over the next three. That is not quite what the top of the line figures would suggest. There's been a growing disconnect, in other words, between the amount the government says it's borrowing and the amount it's actually borrowing, and I think people are being given a mistaken impression of the real state of Ontario's finances as a result.